My best friend died when we were kids. This one comes at us from Lighthouse Horror. This one is subtle, yet strange. It's about a girl named Jessica who is confronted by her old best friend, Grace. The problem, Grace died 10 years prior. At this point, we find out how Grace died. Her and Jessica went into the woods to practice starting a fire. Then Jessica quite randomly gets pulled into a cave. Grace jumps in to save her, and they discover that a bunch of people they know are in the cave, but something about them doesn't seem quite right. Tentacles burst from their bodies, and they start walking towards Jessica and Grace. Figuring they have no options left, they decide to light the cave on fire and make an attempt to escape. Jessica makes it out and goes to pull Grace out of the cave, but sadly, she slips through Jessica's hands and gets dragged back into the blazing cave. Now, 10 years later, Grace is back. Well, sort of. She, much like the others in the caves, has tentacles and has clearly been turned into one of those cave creatures. Grace and Jessica sit down and have a little talk, and this is where I would say some of the better aspects of the story come in. We get some more touching emotional moments, and like I said, this is probably one of the better parts of the story. Things don't stay humble for too long. Grace attempts to grab Jessica with one of her tentacles, but Jessica shoots her with a revolver, killing her. So, I'm a little conflicted on this one. On one hand, I really love the setup and the concept as a whole. The idea of somebody losing their best friend is very traumatizing, and there's a lot that can be played on that. However, I think there's one major problem with this story: the tentacle cave creatures. I just feel they're a bit tacked on, much like in the story My Research Partner's Body Was Never Found. I just feel the supernatural element was not necessary. I think this would have worked better if it was a little more ambiguous, like if it was alluding to the idea that Jessica was just imagining Grace, like some kind of mental illness, or she's going crazy, or, something like that. It is mentioned that Jessica had to go through years of therapy to cope with Grace's death, so I just felt like maybe playing on that concept would have been more interesting, but I don't know. The cave creatures just kind of ruined this one for me. I'm going to give this one a C+. It's not terrible. I don't think it's an absolutely horrendous story. It's just alright. Like I said, the cave creatures really kind of took a lot of I guess, the scariness and tragedy out of it for me. But that said, it isn't terrible. I guess the only thing I could say is either read it or give the audio a listen and decide for yourself.